he, he, give me some instructions. He said, apparently he needed to say the last part he should have said was be brief. My sponsor tells me a story about having Sharon in a prison one time at a graduation ceremony for guys in the unit that actually graduated high school, I guess it was, and he was invited in as a guest speaker, and he was talking to the lady that put the event on, and he said, "How long should I talk?" And she said, "Well, ask the Spirit for guidance and pray that the Spirit be brief." But anyway, so very grateful to be representing CFC or talk a little bit about it. I'm here to tell you that one of the most important things in my sobriety is the service that I've done in CFC and what I've seen done. Some of the most powerful experiences I've ever had has been behind the walls, and I don't say that lightly. And it's one of the things that brings me back week in week, and I've been doing it now for quite a while. And one thing I will say is there's some qualifications for being a member to go behind the walls. And those qualifications look a little bit different than we think they look sometimes. One of them is you're not required to have been in jail or even prison or even have been arrested to go in behind the walls and carry a powerful message. It is not a requirement. And there's people sitting in this room right now that do that and has never experienced that. The other thing I think is important about it is be ready to go to work. Because one thing about CFC work is it is work. And one of the things that's pretty obvious about what it looks like is we're going behind the walls. We're not walking into an AA meeting first, we're walking into a facility. And we're going in behind the walls, and we're going in where people are just absolutely thrilled to see us walk in. And I'm talking about the members of Alcoholics Anonymous behind the walls, because they've been shut away from us. They would like nothing more to be out here and attend our home groups and be a part of them. That's what they would love to be able to do. But obviously they're not able to do that, so we have to go there. And we go in with the same messages that we bring into our home groups. And when we share behind the walls, that's one of the things I have to remember is I share just like I am in my home group. I don't need to change the way I share when I'm behind the walls. I don't need to try to tell a different story than I would tell in my home group. You know, the message of hope and recovery that we carry, it comes from love. I don't need to speak from some kind of spiritual hilltop, but I also don't need to try to get down at a lower street level or talk like I'm on the street. When members come to those meetings, usually they're trying to get away from that kind of behavior back in the dorms. You know, they want to get in there where they can get some peace and hear some recovery and hear some hope, you know. And that's what I was taught, and that's what I believe. Now, one thing dealing with qualifications is probably something to be aware of. You probably don't want to try to go into a unit when you got outstanding warrants. That's probably a bad idea. So those are some of the things we have to get taken care of before we can go in. We don't want to be on probation or have pending criminal charges, things like that kind of prevent us from going in, at least temporarily. And so I've been, you said 15 minutes, right?
Sure. 3,
30. What the meetings look like. And the meetings can have all sorts of different flavors. I like that. That's what my sponsor likes using that term, flavors. You know, the meeting I go into on a regular basis, most of the time it's big book discussion type of meeting. And we like to stay in the literature because it kind of keeps us focused on a topic and on a solution when we're in the literature instead of getting outside into some other things. And so I enjoy doing that, and the group seems to get a lot out of that. And the group I go to, they conduct the meeting themselves. They do all the readings, they chair the meeting, and I'm kind of there supporting that, if that makes sense, but that's not always the case. Sometimes I might have to step up and take a more of a leadership role. I might have to chair the meeting for a week or two before we get somebody that's able and willing to do it, you know. So that flavor can change based on what the meeting might look like. I'm going to take these glasses off, and I'm going to tell you, I cannot see you now. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I can see what I got down here now. When dealing with, and this goes for the staff, this goes for, the meetings, the members behind the walls, whatever, it's important that I do what I'm going to say I'm going to do. Because this might go as a shock, but there's a lot of people behind the walls that tend to not do what they say they're going to do, and they lie some and stuff like that. And some dishonest behavior going on in prisons. I know that must be shocking. So they're used to seeing that. And I think it's very important when I go in there is I carry a message of honesty. I carry a message of show up when I say I'm going to show up. Don't promise something I can't deliver, stuff like that. Because it's about also building trust. Just like if we're sponsoring somebody, we have to build trust. And so it's important for me to carry a consistent message and be a part of, I'm the same guy, week in and week out. And there's certain things that I can do, there's certain things I can't do, Sometimes the staff has certain rules and stuff that I just can't do some things. And I had a guy approach me last week, and he wanted me to do something that wasn't quite what I was willing to do and wasn't really on the level. It wasn't illegal or anything, but it wasn't about AA and recovery. And I told him I couldn't do that. And I didn't know how he was going to take that, and I told him why. The next week, he was the first guy to come up to me and greeted me and thanked me for being there. So it's important that I carry the message each week, the same message, and custody level has a lot to do with what a meeting may look like. At the unit I go to, it's a high turnover. We just had a chairperson that got out in the last 2 or 3 weeks. He was a really fine member, very dedicated, but he got to go home. And so now we're kind of trying to fill that out and who's the next person going to be. And the group kind of decided on someone and voted a person in. So the group made that decision. And so the members were a part of that. When there's a high turnover, sometimes the meeting may look a little different because we just don't have them very long on that particular camp. Sometimes they might be there for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and sometimes it might be there for a number of years. It just differs. And so the meeting format kind of has to look, needs to have the flavor of what that facility might be and how much time we have that we can be with them. Like currently we are able to go in we're able to be with them about 1 hour. And 10 minutes of that is drinking coffee. But 10 minutes of that drinking coffee is also fellowship. And some of the best conversations I've had with members on the inside has been around a coffee cup. And that's when, we can get down to some things that may not be shared in the meeting. I want to talk a little bit about staff. Let's see how much room I got here. Okay. 5 minutes, Jerry.
You're good, man.
Staff, and I am absolutely thrilled to be able to tell you the relationship that we have with the staff at Richmond Correctional is beyond any I've really experienced. And I know Jerry's probably going to get up here and talk about some of his experiences, but there's people sitting in this room right now that were able to go in on what's called a one-time pass and speak to the guys and be the speaker at the speaker meeting and behind the walls. And I think that has a lot to do with the relationship with the staff. About 2 months ago, I guess it was, maybe a little longer. Time always escapes me. I never can get a grasp on how long it's been, but brought a guy in, and he was tickled to death to go in there, excited. So we get up there to the gate, and I'm telling him all the specifics. No firearms, you can't take your firearm in, you can't take your pocket knife or that machete you got in. That's a joke. And but you can't take cigarettes in, tobacco products, stuff like that. Contraband. No cell phone. Then I said, the only thing you need to bring in is your driver's license. And he said to me, huh, I don't have that. And I'm like, you mean you come down here and expect to get into a prison without ID? So they're going to let somebody in from the outside. They don't even know who it is. Guess what? They let him in. And I believe that's specifically because of the relationship that we have with the staff. I'm not going to say that that was necessarily a great thing that he was let in without ID, but I think it's because they trust us. They trust us. And that comes from, just carrying the same message every week, showing up when we're going to say we're going to show up, treating the staff as well as we are being treated and even better sometimes. And we're just blessed that we've got that kind of relationship. Following the protocol is critical. They'll have different protocols that we have to follow, and it's just, we follow the rules. And it's important to do that. And there's reasons for these rules. Sometimes it seems ridiculous that I got to take my shoes off, so they can look inside of my soles and make sure I'm not carrying in a bazooka or something. And but they have those kind of rules for a reason. And and so I just do that stuff and be a part of what that is. Sometimes they might have a situation, showed up in the parking lot before to go in, gung-ho about going in and meeting, having a great meeting and everything, and they come in and say, your guys are probably not getting in tonight. We've got a situation. And a lot of times that situation looks like they had a little fight or something, or maybe they found some contraband in one of the lockers or something they've been looking for quite a while, and they're having a shakedown. That kind of stuff can happen. But I showed up when I was supposed to show up, and we showed up when we were supposed to show up. We do what we said we were going to do. And the next week, the guys are like, sometimes they'll ask us, where were you last week? I said, we were here. Trust us, we were here. We just weren't allowed to come in. Some of the things have to do with orientation, if you want to be a volunteer. And I mentioned something about one-time passes. If anybody's in here and they do have some interest in going in and checking it out, that is a possibility. You can just sign a piece of paper and give a little bit of information about yourself, and you probably can go in and visit. But that's like a one-time thing. I usually do those once a year. They'll let us do them once a year, and that's for, just kind of to check it out. Or we do it for speakers as well. But if you're interested in possibly going in and being involved and actually doing it on a regular basis, the prisons have kind of a application where they go through and they make sure you're not, wanted for something serious. Had a guy come up to me not too long ago, and he said he's getting his stuff straightened out. He's excited to go in, but he's got to get his stuff behind him. As soon as that stuff clears and it's behind him, he'll be able to fill out an application. And then they have orientation, where they go through a couple hours of orientation, and then you can come in on a regular basis. It's kind of what that looks like. But and so I'm going to stop right there, Jerry, and appreciate all you listening to me. And I'll just say, I'll just repeat it, that the work that I've seen done and the work that I've been a part of is just, it's brought Alcoholics Anonymous to life in my life. And it's made a world of a difference, not only in just my own sobriety, but in the relationships that I've built with people behind the walls. My best friend spent almost 10 years in prison. And I met him behind the walls. And he is sober today on the outside. and he's able to return back inside the walls and carry the message. It's a powerful thing to see that happen. So, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Good job. I'm Jerry Weaver. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July the 2nd, 1989. I'm a member of a group called There's a Solution. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays in Cary at 7 p.m. And I also take a meeting to Central Prison on Wednesday night. And I go to the Wake County Jail Wednesday during the day when I can make it. It's good to be here, good to be sober. I got to finish a story that Greg told. So he was talking about when he was wearing khakis and white shirt or whatever, and then he mentioned me. So I was at a unit one night, and we were having the meeting, and I was wearing a pair of khakis and a white shirt. The inmates wear these brown and white shirts. They're similar to khakis, but it's a little off color. And they called for the count right in the middle of the meeting. Well, the meeting had just started, actually. And so when they did the count, they make us get up, and everybody had to get around the room so they could count properly. Well, the count didn't clear. They got done with the count. We get back to start meeting, and then the count doesn't clear, so they come back in and they start counting. Now, it's a big facility. They're counting everywhere, not just where we're at. And they count. We get back, start the meeting back, and over the intercom, count not clear, count not clear. So they start counting again. And by this time, words traveling and people are talking, and normally when the count's off, it's because they're missing people. So if they're supposed to have 1,000, they would only be counting 999, and then they were one over, and they couldn't figure it out, and so they were counting me, and it's a true story. So they were just baffled that they had one inmate more than they were supposed to have, and, but so anyway, that's the story. They let me out. I think one of the two probably biggest myths in doing correctional work is, Daniel mentioned them, but one is that you've had to have been locked up or trouble with the law or in prison to do correctional work. I think you're probably very effective as a volunteer if you have that experience and probably have some credibility with the folks in there, but it's not necessary to carry the message into a jail or to a prison, to have been locked up. People are looking for a solution, and they're looking for, like the flyer says, they're looking for some light in the darkness. And many of our volunteers in North Carolina have never been locked up, and they're very effective at helping inmates. So that's a misconception. And so if you're interested in the work, you don't have to have been locked up. I think another misconception, Daniel touched on this, is that if you go in and do the work, that you got to drop down to somebody to their level, and you'll see people that come in to speak, they'll start embellishing their story, and they'll start cussing like you've never heard this person cuss before, and then all of a sudden they'll start cussing, and they're telling stories that they normally wouldn't tell at an AA meeting, and it's and they think that they're helping people identify by doing that. And the best thing to do if you're going to do correctional work is to, for the most part, is to act just like you would at your home group or any other meeting and carry the same message. And so that's just the two things that are interesting to me. So I got involved by really two guys at a group I was going to. I was only sober about 3 months. And these two guys were getting ready to start a meeting at Harnett Correctional in Lillington. And they asked if I was interested. And I remember the guy that came in and talked to me when I was sitting in a detox. I literally remember him telling me that he hoped that when I got better, I would help other people, that I would pass it on. And I was told by these guys that hey, you've got access to meetings every day. People locked up don't. And it really is kind of I wouldn't say the last frontier in AA, but it is a place where there's just a huge need for people that don't have access to stuff that we have access to. And so, I mean, I did it out of a desire to actually want to help somebody. And I was curious too about just being in prison. I've never been in prison. Barely been in jail. I've gotten in a lot of trouble with the law, but people always got me out before I got too deep into into anything. And so I mean that's why I went in was really a desire to be helpful and to pass on what had been passed on to me. And you know, I realized really quick from my very first meeting was that kind of on the flyer to expand on that was when the folks are locked up and somebody from the outside comes in, they light up. And I learned real quick that we were actually bringing light to people. That it was, and even if they were there for the wrong motives, some of them, most of them are, a lot of them are, we're still helping them in some way, shape, and form, and we're still bringing some hope and a message to them. And I realized that pretty quickly. And it actually, when I would leave there, I still have this experience. When I leave a facility, I actually have, something happens to me. I just feel better. I feel better about myself. I feel better about what's going on. I feel better about Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm happy that maybe we touched somebody or that we made a difference in somebody's day, even if it was just for that hour. And that's that healing, I think, that Greg talked about, and one person helping another person. And I don't always like, initially when I'm driving over there, I'm getting ready to do something, I don't always like, man, let's go get the job done. I'm real enthusiastic. Sometimes I don't, right? You don't always feel good or want to go, but I always feel better when I leave. And you'll hear that with a lot of people that have that experience. And just a couple of other things that Daniel hit on. So the meetings in there should look like meetings on the outside. There are differences depending on the unit. Like at the Wake County Jail, it's pretty transient for the most part. I mean, people are kind of in and out. So we try to focus a meeting on a beginner, and we typically talk about step 1, 2, or 3, sponsorship, just kind of basic things. There's a little bit of flexibility with the shares. You wouldn't want to try to establish a group in there, do some kind of long-term big book study. At Central Prison, those folks are there for a long time. Most of those guys are going to be there for a while. So we do try to establish a group there, and we try to get the inmates more involved with kind of group chores and making coffee and getting literature out. We'll let those guys in the jail. We typically wouldn't let an inmate chair a meeting. Normally the volunteers chair the meeting. At Central Prison, at that group, we would like for the inmates to actually chair their own meetings, and for the most part that happens. And so it just depends on what facility you're in and what's going on in there. And it's important to follow protocol and to follow whatever it is that they ask us to do. Sometimes that can be a challenge, but it's really important. A few stories around that. I had a guy one time that we brought in. We got him approved to go into Harnett, and we're sitting there in the middle of the meeting, and he drops a cigarette. This was back when you could actually smoke in the prison. He dropped cigarettes on the floor, and another inmate came by and scooped them up, and so they had all that choreographed and planned. And after the meeting, me and the other guy, there was 3 of us going in, we confronted him about it. We basically wouldn't let him back in. Never let him back in. I mean, that's just complete. just a complete violation of rules. It could actually have gotten us in some serious trouble. Could have got him into serious trouble, and it risked the meeting. And so it's dumb to try to violate the rules or try to get around them, skirt around them. I was a community volunteer for years and would take inmates out of Wake Correctional in Raleigh. And I was taking this guy out just to meetings. And I took him to Willow Springs one night, and I'm in the meeting had kind of just started. And I'm looking around, and he's not in the room, right? And when you take somebody out of a prison, you're really responsible for them. And sometimes they'll send, guards around looking for him, or I don't know what, some kind of officer. Anyway, the guy's missing. I'm like, oh no, he's escaped. And I walk out in the parking lot, I'm looking around for him, and I won't share all the details, but his girlfriend was out in the parking lot, and they were in the car together, and the windows were all fogged up, and I never took him out again. I appreciate what he was doing. I probably would have done the same thing if I was in his position. But you just got to be careful what's happened and what happens. And one other story about it's vitally important to try to keep good relationships with staff and with the administration. And on more than one occasion, I have had relationships with guards or program people that have actually had family members that had alcohol problems and would ask me questions about them. On several occasions, was asked to actually make 12-step call on like a guard's brother or program person's wife, and that's the power of the program there, and the power of an example is that if we set a good example and people actually see that it works for people. I mean, imagine that a guard saying, "Hey, I got a brother that has an alcohol problem. Can you reach out to him?" And that's a powerful, powerful statement for Alcoholics Anonymous and the change that can come over in people. So I think I have. Time goes by quick, don't it, Daniel? You should have burned up some more. Hey, it's really, really important work. It's not for everybody. It's a serious commitment. It will test your patience and your willingness, but there's a huge need for it. So if you're interested, you should get your district coordinator, whoever it is, and get involved. I think we're going to ask if anybody's got any questions. Yes.
Do the inmates have access to the big book?
So basically, yes. It would depend on. They do, yes. The different ways. Sometimes we bring books in, and we're able to give them to the inmates. Sometimes we have to give them to the staff, or some facilities you have to actually have them mailed in from GSO, and they can get them from the staff that way. There are some libraries in some of the facilities where the books are available. In some of the state facilities now, they actually have tablets, and they can access the big book on tablet. But a resourceful inmate will get a big book. If that answers your question. Yes.
Are you allowed to help sponsor or do pen pals kind of thing, like write the inmates?
That's a good question, Vanessa. So there's a few ways to do that. There is a correspondence program. I know it was on our notes to actually bring up. I think we forgot it. Both of us did. So there's a few ways to do that. If you want to correspond with an inmate, you can actually do that through the GSO office, and there's a form called correspondence that you can fill out. There's a copy of it. You can fill that out and send it in, or you can go online now and do it, I believe. And they will connect you with an inmate in another state, and you can correspond with them that way. There's actually a huge need for mail correspondence right now. I think I wouldn't say they're full with female, but there are currently some folks that are waiting, inmates that are waiting for males to correspond with. So you can do it that way. As far as sponsoring, there are some facilities that actually will let some of us sponsor people. Some facilities will let you like get there a little early to meet with people, or stay late and meet with people. There are some where they don't want you involved with them at all, other than the meeting. It just really depends on the facility. Yep. Yes.
So, I know you have to fill out like a form to go to corrections, but is there a requirement? Do you have to be sober for a certain amount of time? I know you don't have any warrants or anything like that,
Yeah.
but do you have to be sober for any length of time?
For the state prison system, you have to, what they say, off paper for a year, meaning that you can't have been locked up or off. You got to be out of prison, off parole, off probation, house arrest, any of that stuff for a year. Now, there are actual policies. There's an actual policy that says that there are some facilities that make exceptions, but typically you'd want to be off of what they call paper for a year before you apply. For the county jail, it just depends on the sheriff and what they do. The other misconception is that you can't be a volunteer if you've been locked up before, or if you're a convicted felon. It's not true. I think we've got some convicted felons in the room that now have blue cards or CFR cards. So the jail, it's different policies. It's a little easier to communicate sometimes with the jail and with the sheriff, and to figure out what's going on. Any other questions? Here's a reason to do the work. That very first meeting that I went to in Littleton in 1989, there was a guy there that several of us helped him, and he's been sober ever since those meetings at Harnett, and is now a professor at a major university because of Alcoholics Anonymous. 2 weeks ago, a lady came to our home group that Madeline met at the Wake County Jail. And so when you see things like that, I mean, because you can get discouraged doing the work, but when you see things like that happen, you know you're doing the right thing. So thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. Love the Q&A at the end there. Be able to bring some questions.